Hello everyone. Today I'm going to sing a song composed by Rabindranath Tagore at the age of 39. My commentator is Florence, who has recently completed an MPhil at the Faculty of Divinity. Florence is a yoga teacher and is currently exploring career options relating to adult education, cultural heritage and wellness. Sometimes the question is put to me, do you do yoga? And this is what I say. When I teach myself a new song, I attentively listen to every word. I contemplatively listen to the melody which is wrapped around every word. And I meditatively listen to the beat that is expressed through every word. Having drawn this sonic pattern and this verbal matrix into my inner self, I send it out to the world again. In this oscillation between absorption and projection, I am not an I anymore. I am the song that I am singing, and that is my music yoga. He shokha momo hridayero. He shokha momo hridayero. সংসারে সব কাজে ধ্যানে জ্ঞানে হৃদয়ের হে সখা মম হৃদয়ের ও নাথ তুমি এসো ধীরে সুখ দুঃখ হাসি নয়ন নীরে ও নাথ তুমি এসো ধীরে সুখ দুঃখ হাসি নয়ন নীরে লহ আমার জীবন ঘিরে লহ আমার জীবন ঘিরে সংসারে সব কাজে ধ্যানে জ্ঞানে হৃদয়ের হে সখা মম হৃদয়ের
Hello, and thank you, Anchor, for giving me the opportunity to respond to this song today. So, my first comment is that often when we think about spirituality, of this yearning for higher spiritual ideals, we often get this sense of rejecting the world, of rejecting the material world, and seeking something outside ourselves. But really, this song emphasizes this idea of the closeness of God. You know, when Ankur's taught me in the past in the divinity faculty, we often talk about bhakti, the path of loving devotion within Hinduism and the yogic tradition, and how God is closer to us than our own self. You know, God knows us even more than we know ourselves, and is closer to us than we are to ourselves, which is a kind of oxymoron in itself. But nonetheless, there's this sense of being in the world, that God is there, or the Lord, the supreme deity, is there when we're sad, during tears and sorrows, but also joy and laughter. So this idea of actually the closeness of God in the world, and really in connection to our humanity as well. You know, in those very worldly experiences of human suffering, sorrow and joy, actually God is there and close to us the whole time. There's also some interesting references I noticed to different aspects of Hinduism. So jhana is mentioned, which is wisdom, but also associated in Hinduism and yoga with the path of knowledge. Also, hidayah was mentioned, this idea of love, the heart related to bhakti, this loving devotion, God being so close to us. And also dhyana, this idea of equipoise or equanimity, of calmness. So God is with us during these different facets of human experience, which also relate to, you might say, gifts from God, from divinity, knowledge, love, equanimity. And these are all associated with yoga in a sense. But this is not yoga of physical asana or of rejecting the world. It's yoga of being in the world, of action, of everyday life. And then there's this sense of gentleness as well, the gentleness of God, your gentle ways. Often when we think about, well, in the Abrahamic tradition, if we think about God, it might be as this wrathful man in the sky, an angry God. Or even in relation to yoga, we often think about force and action, forceful action. I mean, hatha yoga, hatha, is often often translated as the forceful yoga. But there's this sense of the gentleness of God here. Gentleness there with us all the time during all these different facets of our human experience. Now, I want to comment on your introduction, Ankur, when you talk about your own yogic practice as that of music. And I love this idea of the oscillation between absorption into what you're doing and then projection and then action. There's a sense of inwardness but also outwardness constantly. And this comes up in my own yoga practice and teaching as well. And we might think of yoga here as ultimately a way of being, relating, learning, engaging in the world, this oscillation. But there's often, I think in the West especially, we can be really hard on ourselves, myself included. We're not good enough at yoga, or we're not actually yogic enough. We're not quite getting it right. But going back to this beautiful song that you sung so wonderfully, and which itself was, an absorptive exercise to listen to. There's this sense that God is always there, even if and when we're imperfect, even at the extremes of our emotionality. And when we can connect back to that, then we can find some more solace. So the final thing I want to say is just reflecting on learning itself. I'm so passionate about education, and we're constantly learning. But in my own life, I've been learning some particular things, such as learning to drive and learning to DJ. I love dancing, and I love dance music and drum and bass in particular. And as someone who's always been quite academic, there's sometimes this sense of this desire to cling and to get stressed when don't feel like you're learning quick enough. But actually, when you talk about yoga and music, learning is a process of listening, a process of practice, of repetition and formation in relation to that activity over time. So I think we can learn a lot from this song and from your comments, Ankur, about whatever activity we engage in. And engagement in activity is always a process of learning, whether explicit or not. Whatever activity we're engaging with, can we firstly have some trust and faith that it's a process and that we might not get it straight away? Can we commit to the repetition of the practice? Can we surrender ourselves to it, knowing there's something greater working within and through us? And over time, through that repetition, through that practice, we hope that it will become this process of meditative absorption, where maybe our identity as a self in relation to our activity loosens and we become more of one. We get into that flow state, that interplay between absorption and projection, until we are fully with it and it is with us. And I definitely get this in my yoga practice. Sometimes that comes more easily to me in the asana practice, in dancing. But actually, it's when we do these things that are more challenging to us, these new activities like learning to drive, like learning to DJ, like learning a new skill. Firstly, having the humility to have that beginner's mindset, and then over time, letting go and getting into it. So that's the end of my little reflection. Thank you so much, Ankur, for sharing your music with us in the world, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye bye.